All right, welcome to the Truth and Leadership Academy, everybody. You guys love it when I say that, right? It's all official and stuff. So today I want to talk about mastery, learning to be the best at all you do. And so today we're going to look into that and what that looks like and kind of look at a formula that can help us with that. So with that, keep moving here. Ever heard of the term jack of all trades, master of none? Right? Carrie? No, that's not true. I would use you as an example of not being that. Because you've done some remarkable things that takes mastery. So, and I'm sure all of us have too. Ever feel like a jack of all trades, master of none? I feel like that sometimes. But I have been able to master some things as well, and you guys have as well. What are some things maybe in your lives that you know that you've mastered? It can be something small, it can be something big, something you know you've done really well at.
Saucing a pizza.
Saucing a pizza. All right, what'd you say?
Tying my shoes.
Tying your shoes. What else? What's something you've mastered? Anybody like an instrument or something? No? Okay, sports? Anything? Okay.
Video game.
I mastered driving.
Driving?
Can't really have mastered driving.
You're a girl
All right.
Hey.
And by the way, when I say master, it doesn't mean that you have to be the best in the world at it. It just means that you have to be the best you can be at it. Does that make sense? And that's really what mastery is. It doesn't mean you're the best in the world necessarily. All right. So our culture has somehow learned that just enough to get by is easier than mastering a skill or trade. So just enough to get by. And that's where the jack of all trades comes in. We do just enough, or we get just good enough to maintain whatever we're doing, or just to stay above water. And unfortunately, this is something that's really a cultural problem. It's not just an individual problem, it's a cultural problem. This is the way our culture has been leaning more and more every decade for the past several decades. And so now we find ourselves in a situation where you can go out and get a job in lots of different places. I mean, if you want to be a cook, you can go get a job as being a cook. If you want to be a mechanic, you can go do that. There's so many things you can do, and you don't have to be qualified to do it, that it's simple to have a bunch of skills, but not really any depth at them. It's simple to do that. Now, rewind 50 years ago, that's not the way it was. You know, jobs weren't that easy to get. And so in order to get a job, you had to show that you have some kind of a skill in that area, and it was hard to get jobs without skills, so you'd have to do the internship and so on. But then once you have it, you have to get really good at it in order to keep it. So if you're a mechanic, for instance, you had to really learn how to be a good mechanic, because only the good mechanics are the ones that keep their jobs. You don't really have to be that great to keep your job now, because the whole job market is flipped upside down, where the demand is greater than the supply. So you don't have to be all that great to get by these days. It's just the culture has just shifted over time in that way. And so that has created a little bit of a problem. So you just don't have to master anything to get by. So why do we fail to master our skills? So number one, lack of priorities. It takes too much time and effort. And of course, if there's no incentive to master something, why prioritize it, right? Lack of purpose, can't see the reward, no incentives. That can be a reason why we don't master our skills. Lack of focus, we can't concentrate on the task at hand. We'll get into that a little bit more down the road here too. Lack of commitment, we like to keep our options open. Anybody know anybody like that really didn't want to commit to anything because they just want to keep their options open? It could be in their relationships, could be in their jobs, it could be in lots of things. Well, that's a really common kind of a worldview these days that people do that. It's that lack of commitment. It's just easier not to commit because that fear of missing out, right? Is it hard to commit to putting down your phone for a whole day and not answer it? It's really hard. Why? Because we're afraid of what we're going to miss. But those of us that were around before phones, didn't have cords, it's not as hard for us. Although I'll admit it still is hard. We bought into the cell phone thing too, and we were distracted by them as well. But nevertheless, it's a part of culture, and that's the way it is. It's hard to commit to things. It's hard to uncommit to other things. Lack of confidence. The self-image of people these days is much, much lower than it used to be. Screen time has a lot to do with that. People with that spend a lot of screen time, particularly as children, grow up with a much greater expectation of depression or anxiety in their lives. Again,
Just because they're not used to interacting with people face to face.
Yep. And there's just a lot of choices out there now. Again, we don't have to commit because there's so many choices. We don't have to commit, and that creates. Anybody ever gone to a restaurant that has like an unusually large menu? A lot of menus are kind of simple and easy. You just kind of pick some. Yeah, you get all of these options. You're looking at one page after they have like every kind of food, and you don't know what to do because there's way too many options. Well, that's a form of anxiety, but we get the same thing just in life. When it comes to careers, you get to be 18, 25 years old, whatever, and you're really starting to think about your career. And there's so many options you can do, so many job openings. You can get kind of crazy, not knowing what to do. And so it can be really easy to stand back and not master anything. That's the way our culture is. The gravity is pulling us towards not mastering. And so that's part of what we struggle with. Lack of self-discipline or indulgence. That can keep us from mastery as well. It's hard to be self-disciplined these days. Our culture is not nearly as healthy as they used to be, even though we should be. We have diet everything now on the shelves of every grocery store, but yet we're still, the Americans particularly, we're so much overweight compared to other countries. And so there's a lot of indulgence going on. There's a lot of addictions. Chemical dependencies going on in our country, and that's part of it too. And these are all deterrents from keeping us from really succeeding and mastering, working towards mastery. So, all right, mastery roadblocks. So let's talk about commitment again here, real quick. So for everything we commit to, we need to uncommit to 100. This is not a mathematical formula, but more of a principle. And so you don't have to memorize that. I don't really have a great formula for you or sources on that. But the idea is that we have so many things that we can commit ourselves to some degree, at least, that we get overwhelmed with things. Anybody just have a jam-packed schedule? Yeah, why is that? Because there's too many things we could be doing, right? There's just so many things. And so that's another reason why it's hard for us to master something, because we keep getting distracted by all of these other options that we could be doing instead, right? All right. Every yes needs to be defended by 1,000 no's. We need to limit the number of irons in the fire. So sometimes we say yes to too many things. Somebody will ask us, hey, can you help me with this? Can you do that? Yeah, I'll help you with that. And so you start saying yes, yes, yes. You start saying yes to too many things, and you get overwhelmed, and then you double book things, and then you have to, whatever it is. Maybe you're putting things too close together, and so now you're late to things because you're overcommitted, or you forget about things because you forgot to put it in your calendar. We can easily say yes to too many things.
Put as much effort into the thing because you're too spread out.
Right. You don't master something because you're trying to do a little bit of something. Mm-hmm. Imagine somebody juggling 7 balls. They're not going to be able to focus on any one of them for very long because they've got 7 of them going at one time. Right? All right. 80% of all things we start, we do not finish. This is another issue of commitment. We don't finish things. We start them, and then, like a squirrel, we get distracted by the shiny object, and we go do something else instead. And we never do things long enough to master them. We keep moving on to different things, whether it's moving on from one job to another, or just from, I don't know, at home. Think of all the distractions you got: TVs, you got tablets, you got kids maybe fighting, and you got all kinds of things going on. You could get distracted. You got neighbors and grandparents. I don't know, whatever. Everybody's life's a little bit different, but there's so many ways to get distracted and pulled away. Yep. We don't commit ourselves to mastery. Good is the enemy to great. So there's a book called Good to Great. It's by Jim Collins. I may have mentioned it a time or two here. I don't remember. But one of the first chapters is basically says good is the enemy to great, or the enemy of great. And the way he says it, he says, hey, there are a lot of good schools out there, but there's not very many great ones. There's a lot of good restaurants out there, but there's not very many great ones. There's a lot of good mechanics out there, but there's not very many great ones. This is all about mastery. A lot of people are stopping short of great because they're okay with just being good. Or maybe sometimes people are okay with just being okay. And that's even worse. Or just getting by. But either way, it makes it a little bit harder to climb up that ladder to mastery and become great at something. Just simply because we don't commit ourselves to it. We have our bar here because our bar here, it lets us keep our job or lets us keep our status, whatever it is. And so we just want to get above that. When other people, maybe the ones that are really succeeding, they're up here and we're not putting our sights up there to get there. We're not trying to master anything. We're just trying to get okay at something or get decent at something. So commitment has a lot to do with that. Concentration or focus also. Concentration means seizing this moment to make it all it can be without allowing past memories, present distractions, or future worries to steal your moment. Boy, those are kind of big, aren't they? There's a lot of people that live in the past. They're held hostage by the past. Pains, hurts. They're wounded, maybe, and they can't get past relational things. I've had a little bit of taste of that in my life as well. Thanksgivings can be difficult sometimes if you're spending it with family, and maybe there are unresolved things going on in the family because we're holding on to the past. Or present distractions. We're not able to focus on the future because we're too focused on what's going on right in front of our face now, so we don't plan well. Maybe we do what's right in front of us and we just kind of solve one little problem to run into another problem, and then you run into another problem and then two more pop up instead of planning down the road to try to move past those issues, right? We get or we're distracted by the future. Maybe we're too much planning. Maybe we're dreamers. We've got all these great plans that we want to do in the future, and we think about them all the time, but we don't know how to land the plane. We don't know how to make them happen so they don't ever happen. So we can get distracted by a lot of different things with what we concentrate on, past, present, and future. We live in an ADD world or an ADHD world. People fear that if they focus too much on one thing, they'll miss out on all those interesting things going on around them. We already talked about that a little bit. We have far too much clutter in our lives that keep us focusing on the most important stuff. Clutter, that could be, we talked about busyness, but it could actually be clutter. I mean, it could actually be that we just have too much stuff, and that keeps us from mastery as well. Multitasking. Multitasking is a myth. Humans can only really concentrate on one thing at a time. But so often we want to do a whole bunch of things at once. And that is true. It doesn't seem right at first. But when you dig down, the human brain can only do one thing at a time. That doesn't mean that you don't start one thing, get it going, like start your Hobart mixer or something, and you're making something, and then you use that time to go do something else. That's
called multi-syncing.
Yeah, that's not multitasking.
I read that than that.
And anyway, people try to do too many things at one time. They got too many things on their calendar when they should focus on the most important things. And when you're doing too many things at once, the most important things are the first ones that get ditched usually, because usually you do the easier things versus the most important. All right, mastery. Let's look at a definition of mastery. This is Webster's definition, not mine. So there's like 4 different parts to this definition. The first is full command or understanding of a subject. The second is outstanding skill or expertise. The third is the power of command or control. And the fourth is victory or superiority. So it has different elements in there. So to master a skill is to learn all there is to learn about the subject and develop the skill to perform at the highest level possible in the area of that subject. So it's about learning all there is and to develop that skill. Any skill that can be mastered needs to be measurable and have specific requirements to be met before mastery can be deemed. I'll talk about that in a second here more. Mastering requires that obstacles, distractions, and excuses be removed to bring a clear path to mastery. It requires discipline, concentration, training, accountability, and time. So that's pretty important to understand too, that you got to get the junk out of the way. Anybody been distracted by a lot of things and just completely let something fall down that you didn't do? That happens all the time. I think we all do that far more than probably what we should. And I think we do that a lot more than what previous generations did too. My grandparents' parents, I don't think they struggled with it because their lives weren't nearly as convoluted and all the distractions and opportunities. We just get overwhelmed. I don't think they were so overwhelmed. They knew that they wake up, they got to go, feed the chickens and the hogs, clean out the pig pen, chop a couple trees down. I don't know, whatever. But, it was so much simpler those days. Yeah, you can see I make stuff up as I go, right?
Down. I didn't know farmers did that.
Well, sure, because you have to.
I guess.
Yeah, they got fireplaces, right?
Yeah.
They got to stay warm in the winter.
Have anybody do anything for them?
Yeah. Mastery isn't about controlling your circumstances, rather controlling how you handle yourself in those circumstances. So it's not about controlling your circumstances. It's not you're mastering somebody else, controlling someone else. Mastery is about controlling you, having influence over yourself, regardless of the circumstance. You can have mastery in most any circumstance, where you're in control of yourself. All right, the big idea. Here it is. We need a drum roll. So you cannot effectively teach what you have not mastered. Think that's true? Does anybody want to learn something from someone that hasn't mastered it? That's kind of scary. Do you want to learn something from somebody who just slept in a Holiday Inn Express? Right? The commercial? Are you a doctor? No, but I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express or a Holiday Inn. I don't want to learn from someone like that. I want to learn from somebody that's really, really knows what they're doing, that can teach you, because someone else is going to teach you only what they know, and they don't know very much. I want to learn from somebody great.
At the same time.
Yeah. They're just going to lead you down the road, down the wrong path. So I think that's important. So it's important for us to learn from people who have mastered what they've done. So we need to look at the masters of it, not just people that are okay at it. We don't want to learn from people that are okay. We want to learn from the masters. But the other thing too, the people below us that are going to learn from us, what are they going to learn? Are they going to learn from somebody who's mastered what they're teaching them? Or are they going to learn someone who's just passing on whatever the most relevant information is, right? And I think that's why it's important, especially in the restaurant industry, because there's a lot of details when it comes to training. You got different charts to use and different, operations manuals and just different things, a lot of details that you have to pay attention to. So teaching those details, you have to do those details if anyone else is going to learn those details from you. If you're vague and skipping things and doing shortcuts, that's what they're going to learn too. So you will only be able to teach to the degree that you've mastered it. So if you haven't mastered it, you're not gonna teach somebody else to be a master either. All right. So I have a nephew that his name is Brady. He's 9 years old, and I got to see him over Thanksgiving. He's actually a really great kid. He's 9, and this kid is so polite, self-disciplined. He's smart. And he, when he was 4 or 5, started Taekwondo. And he worked really, really hard for the last 5 or 6 years. He's only 9. So he pulled his belt out and he showed me his belt on Thanksgiving, because I'm always asking him cool questions. So he loves to, show me where he's at. And he's 9, and he's got this belt, a black and red belt, which the title up there says Junior Black Belt. See, a junior, because he's only 9, he can't get this one. He can only get this. This is the highest one he can get until he's adult. He's a black belt. He's 9 years old. This kid is really tough. He could knock any of us down really easy. But this kid works so hard. But the interesting thing about this is that what I've seen with him and the way he approaches things, he doesn't just approach things. He doesn't just approach Taekwondo in that way. He approaches the other parts in his life the same way. He wants to get great at whatever he's going to do. If it's math class, he wants to master that before he moves on. Now keep in mind, there's a difference between mastery and perfectionism. Y'all know the difference? Mastery is when you get great at something by making mistakes, getting up, trying it again, and just continue to keep moving until you find it. Perfectionism is when you're frozen because you're afraid to make a mistake. Well, he's not afraid to make any mistakes. He makes all kinds of mistakes. That's how he got to be a junior black belt. Make sense? And so by being disciplined and being fervent about mastering something, that's how we can do it. And I have no doubt that he's going to carry that lesson on through life in most everything that he does. And I wish I was more like him. He's a cool little kid. All right, there's a lot of squares and a lot of arrows and stuff on here, so I'm going to talk through this a little bit. So I want you to think of this as a timeline, all right? And this is mastery over time. So if you're looking like your lifetime, infancy down here, okay, this is when you're learning the ways. You're just learning the ways of doing things, right? How to do it. You can think of infancy as when you're younger in your life. You can also look at it as younger maybe in your career. Okay, so let's look at it in that light too. So you got technicians on this side, managers and leaders. This is kind of a tier. You know, technicians, this is when you learn to do things. Managers, this is when you learn to manage things with purpose. And then leader, this is when you are leading for results, right? So it's kind of a maturity thing here too. So the idea is that we start off in the infancy stage, we learn the ways, but we don't want to stay there. We want to graduate. We want to keep moving on. Then maybe we move up and we become more responsible for things, and that's because we learn the reasons, right? We learn the reasons why we have to do it this way. Because if you just learn to do things a certain way, but you never learn the reasons, what happens?
You just get repetitive. You don't grow.
And you just don't do it because there's no reason to do it. It's like, this person taught me all the right ways to do it, but does it really matter? Can't I just take some shortcuts instead? Well, the only people that think in terms of shortcuts are the ones that don't understand the reasons. Would you agree with that? Because if you fully understand the reasons and why things are important, if you fully understand that, you will do it right. Right? That's how it works. It's cause and effect. If you understand why it's so important, you'll do it the right way. If you don't, you probably won't, even if you do know the right way. Make sense? Okay, and then moving on later on in our careers, or later on in our jobs, we want to move up to the leader level, and that requires us to have outcomes. Okay, that's what leaders do. Leaders lead to outcomes. They don't just teach the right ways of doing things. They don't just teach the whys, why we do it, but they also lead to outcomes, because the outcomes are important. We're not justified by our efforts. We're justified by our outcomes on the leadership level. And this is interesting because we have a little formula here. Procedures plus purpose equals results, right? Procedures is doing it the right way. Purpose is for the right reasons. And results is the right outcome. Okay? But what if you have the right procedures at any one of these levels, but you don't have the right purpose? Again, you're just not going to do it. What if you have the right purpose, so you're motivated, you understand the reason why we want to do something, but nobody teaches the right way? That's not good either, right? We need to learn the right way as well as the right reason in order to get results. So if either one of these two columns here are missing, you're not going to get the right results. Make sense? It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Mm-hmm. After doing the same thing for a long period of time for the right reasons, you will eventually become a master at whatever you do. But you've got to have both of those components in there. It's interesting how people sometimes in this area will want to move to the manager level, but they've skipped some steps. Have you ever seen anybody get promoted to a manager level and they just weren't ready to be a manager? Right? That happens when we skip some steps. All right. So this next chart is going to be very similar, but this whole process right here that takes up all 90 of these, this whole process can be used on a smaller level as well. So this next one, whoops, wrong way. So the same process can happen here. So I want you to look at the technician. The technician is a person that's a doer. They make pizzas, right? They cook pizzas. They deliver pizzas, right? Okay, they're not managers. They're the technicians. So it's important that they learn the way, they understand the way, and they master the way. Once they do that, they can move over here, grow to the next level, to adolescence, okay? In the adolescent stage, they can learn the reason, understand the reason, and master the reason, right? The reasons or the whys behind it. And once they get that, and you can see how an employee could go through this transition, right? And then they get to the next part where they master the outcome, or they learn the outcome, understand the outcome, and master the outcome, right? And then now you see this technician getting good results. You look at them, you say, wow, they're getting good results. Maybe I should give them a raise. Maybe I should give them a promotion, right? That's the natural way people get promoted. So then we give them some responsibility and they come up here and now they're a manager. But they have to learn a whole different set of things now. They can't just do this stuff and be a manager. You got to learn different things. This is about staffing, training, quality, production and efficiency. These are getting things done at a higher level and affecting other people. When we manage, what can we manage? We manage stuff, we manage time, we manage numbers, right? We manage
Processes.
Yep, processes and tasks. Okay, and that's different than this. This is just being a doer. This is managing things, making sure they get done. But you still got to learn the way, understand the way, and master the way as far as procedures go, as far as manager procedures, not technician procedures, but manager procedures. Then you still got to move on, and you still got to learn the reason, understand the reason, and master the reason for why we do all these things. Why do we? Why do we have certain charts on the wall for this or that? Or why do we teach certain procedures when we're making sauce or making dough? Why do we do these things? What's the reason behind them? And then you have to be able to learn the outcome, understand the outcome, and master the outcome as a manager. You have to be able to do that. You got to get results. And then, of course, then it goes back up here to the next one. Leadership, this is the same thing. This is character, communication, self-discipline. This is influencing other people. This is having an impact on the way other people think and feel. It's showing people respect. It's building a culture within your company that's really, really important. Those are skills. Those are procedures. There's procedures in that you have to learn. You have to learn the way to lead people, understand the way, and master the way to lead people. You have to have those procedures. That might simply be, maybe in the leadership world, procedures might simply be talking people into position in your shift, just knowing the right things to say. Those are procedures, right? Whatever it is, giving people time goals or giving people sales goals or getting people a direction of putting them in place or whatever it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. So at the leadership level, you got to learn the procedures, how to do it. You got to learn the reasons why we do it. Why is it so important to have leadership skills in place? Why is that? Because people matter. And people aren't going to want to work for you if they don't think they matter, right? These are some of the reasons why we do what we do. But what if we just skip that and we just think this is enough? We're not going to have the results on the other end. So leadership comes with another set of results, and it's a greater set of results. Okay? Does that make sense? So you can see how it kind of goes in zigzags in that way. That's kind of the pattern that it goes, the development. As we go through this, one step builds on itself, and you get better and better and better. But we can't do that if we don't try to master each step as we go. If we try to just do a touch and go thing, well, I'll learn a little bit here and then try to move on. What happens is you learn a little bit here and then you just really try to move up to here. You're not even trying to move right. You just, you get good at this. You think, I should be a crew leader now, so make me a crew leader now. Just because you can do good things. But if you don't understand the purpose and you're not getting results, you shouldn't move into this level. Right? Do you agree with that? Doesn't mean you have to be perfect. We can also learn as we go. We don't have to be, completely master being a manager before you become a manager. You master this before you become a manager, and then you work on that too. But I think it's important that we master as we go. What would be some examples in our industry of why this bottom row is so important to each one of those steps? Why are they all that important from a technician standpoint?
Because if you don't make good pizza, you're not going to have a business. Cut
Well,
dry right there.
I can give you an example, from a pizza maker. You have to learn the fundamentals of making pizza, but then you can move on to understanding why it is that we don't put, it's not okay to double the topping. It's not just about cost, but it's also not going to taste good. You have to understand the reasons why. We had a gal that worked for us for a long time. The way we make pizzas is we put the sauce, then we put the veggies, right? And then we put toppings on top of it. There's a reason we do that. But this girl just refused, and she thought, well, they look better with the green peppers and onions on top, although it destroyed the pizza. She would not, she refused to learn the why or care about it. And so
Right.
she could never progress to being a manager or anything else because she's not even bothering to know why we do it.
Right. And she might have been getting subjective results based on what she thought was right or wrong,
That's the way she liked it.
but it wasn't results on what the company needed. Company needs
There's
consistency.
There's a greater reason why we
Yep.
do the things that we do. She
Yep.
didn't bother to investigate.
Right. That's right. All right. How about on the management level? Why is it important to hit all three of these on the management level? Why is it important to understand the way and the reason that leads to the outcome? Who's watching? If you're a manager, who's watching? The technicians are watching, aren't they? And other managers are watching, and maybe your leader is watching. Everybody's watching you. If you're in a management position, you're in the middle, so you've got to have 360-degree leadership going on, right?
Talk about anxiety.
Yeah, that's right. Because you don't want to let your boss down, the leader, the owner, or the general manager, or whatever, and you don't want to let your employees down either. You don't want to let your peers down. It's tough. It's a hard position to be in. But it is really important that we learn the ways, and we get good at the ways. We master the ways, and then we understand the reasons. I want Carrie and I, we want to be able to ask any of our employees and Brooke of maybe what the ways are, and that we know what they are. I mean, I could ask her questions about her field. If she doesn't know the answers or the reasons why they do it, that doesn't reflect on her, right? But if I ask the reasons for any of you guys, ask, well, why do you do it that way? Or what do you do and why do you do it that way? If you can't answer the whys, chances are you're probably not getting the kind of results that you could be if you knew the whys.
The other thing, from a leadership standpoint, I like to always use this example. We have a check policy, right? To take checks. Well, why the policy? What's the purpose of the policy? Well, the purpose of the policy is to prevent us from taking stolen checks. We don't know if there's money in the bank or not. We just want to make sure that we take a check from you that has your name on it, you're the writer, right? And so we have these rules in place. Well, the manager understanding why these rules are in place, if someone throws a curveball at him, say, well, I'm at work, I'm not at home. We only take checks from home. Your check has to be at your house with your name and your address on it. Well, you're at work. Well, then the manager knows they can set aside the policy if they verify different ways that you are in fact who you are. Because they understand the purpose of the policy, they can work around it for the benefit of the customer and the benefit of the company. And that's why I think it's super important that everybody knows why it is they do everything so that if something comes up that they can adjust.
Right. Yep.
Instead of just telling the customer, no, we just don't do it that way.
And that's part of that is empowerment too, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Empowerment is part of.
And you can't empower somebody that doesn't understand why and doesn't buy into it.
Yeah, if they don't know what the standard is first, the way to do it, and then the reason, the results are going to be, I don't know why, I just can't do it. You ever get that? You're on a phone call with some insurance company or a bank or technical support, and you come to a standstill, and they can't help you, and it's just because they're not empowered. Well, policy says we can't do that. Yeah, but your system's broken or whatever. And so it's frustrating when you don't have that empowerment because they don't know why. Like, why can't you help me? I don't know, because
we had a situation last night. Have walk-ins go out. Ours went out the other way. It started turning into a freezer. It's just getting colder and colder and colder in the middle of the night, right? So Cody called me, he already had the situation handled. So we don't have to pay someone overtime to come out in the middle of the night and attack this problem. He just understood food safety and food handling, and he made the adjustments necessary so that if the thing froze overnight, who cares?
Well, he didn't need to call you and ask you what to do. He already knew what to do.
He called me.
He already knew the way.
He'd already done it.
He already knew the way. He already knew the reason. And so you do what you need to do. Yeah. But what if you don't know? What if you didn't know that? What if he was a brand new manager and he, well, I don't know what to do. It's too cold. Maybe he just goes home and goes to sleep. Well, maybe it'll fix itself, right?
Yeah. But understanding, and that's why that's just a general example of knowing the why of everything, and being able to go, okay, I understand all this. I can make a decision. I know how to move the parts.
Right. Yep. How about the leadership stage here? As far as leadership, learning the way, there are the procedures on how we lead people, and the reason why we lead people, the results. Why is that so important in the leadership world? Because I'll be honest, most of us don't think about leadership naturally. We think about management naturally. We think about what needs to get done first, right? Mm-hmm. It's a little harder to think of how can I take these employees and turn them into better employees a month down the road, because that takes something up front.
I guess I just see like as a leader, like you're setting the vision for everyone working there in your company, not only for like those coming up in your company, but also for like how those outside your company will see you too. So like, understanding.
Right.
And as a leader, you're developing the why for the manager, and you're developing the why for the technician.
Yep.
You're gonna, like she said, you're gonna set a vision. Well, so a vision is envisioning an outcome.
Right.
And then you got to work it backwards.
Yep.
If you haven't been there,
yep.
You don't know what backwards looks like.
There's a good chance that the leader is spending more time in this area, and the manager might be spending more time in this area, and a little bit in this area as well. But the higher you go up the chain, the less you're going to do, the procedures, and the more you're going to do the leadership. I don't teach people how to make pizzas anymore, but I deal with more of the purpose. And it should always throughout the store. If you're a general manager, you're going to focus on the purpose more than somebody at a lower position is. Somebody at a lower position is going to work on more management stuff, getting things done, making some good decisions. And then if you're down here, you're just going to do what you're told, really. You're just going to, but that's how it all works at these levels. So what do you guys think is the hardest thing to master in your careers, in your jobs? What's the hardest thing?
To listen, follow rules.
So learning how to get people to want to listen to you? That is hard. I agree. Yep.
That's my biggest issue. I'm always told I'm not assertive enough.
Yep.
I just don't want to feel like I'm being mean to nobody.
Yep.
Like he was gone for different reasons or whatever last week, and like I was on it because I didn't have a choice but to be. It was like sink or swim because
Right.
I watch everything he does and I learn from him. And so I was doing what I was supposed to do, but at the end of the night, I still was like, before I left, I was apologizing to everyone because I felt like I was being mean. They didn't even feel that I was being mean. They thought I was doing my job, but I'm like,
Right.
I'm sorry. You know what I mean?
So for you then, some of this stuff up here then, this might help you hone in on what you need to work on then, right? Like maybe the reason why, maybe if you understand the reason why you have to be assertive and not worry about other people being upset with you. You have to, it shifts your mind a little bit. So when you realize that, hey, this is part of leadership, you're not gonna please everybody all the time, but you got to do the right thing, and you have to expect things that, and sometimes you got to be the bad guy. And once you kind of understand that reason and the purpose for it, it'll help you. And you can also learn different procedures too, maybe how to say things. Sometimes with leadership too, it's being able to say things the right way.
That's why I watch him.
Yep. Because if you're just barking out orders, what's that going to do for you?
Make people not want to do it.
Yeah.
I will say in that situation, a couple of things. Please and thank you are gold and platinum. Okay.
And a smile goes a long way.
Yep.
Number two, if you're firm, fair, and consistent, assertiveness is naturally respected.
Yep. Yep. And so the procedures or the skill part of leadership, that's important too. Maybe it's a verbal thing, how you say things. And so maybe saying, hey, I noticed that you're not doing this right, or you're not doing that right, or your results were poor here. You could go about it a different way and be skilled verbally by saying things like, hey, I noticed you've been struggling a little bit. Is there anything I can do to help you out here? And so now you're behind them instead of pointing a finger at them.
That's what I do most of the time, where I try to make sure, like, if I see somebody just doing what they're supposed to do, even if they haven't been messing up in the past, just acknowledge that they're doing a great job, keep up the good work, and
Yep.
so on and so forth.
Yeah, right. And those are all skills to learn, right? Really leadership is skills. Nobody's just born a natural leader. Some people have some.
I just wanted to, you had asked what was one of the hardest things of leadership. I think that one of the hardest things on this, for a leader standpoint, would be mastering this outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many of us were like you said earlier, you stay right here. You don't try to master what's going to happen next. You think you're done.
Right.
I'm good. I got this part.
Yep.
I don't need anything else.
That is the
That's
hard
one of the
thing.
biggest- that's
It's
a hard
following through to completion, right? In a lot of ways.
It is, and it's not like you're not trying, but it's also not something that you have on your radar, which should be on your radar, because there's an end game for everybody, right?
Right.
Everybody wants to get somewhere, but as you said, there's so much anxiety and so much to do in this world. You can't focus on that end result. You're focused in the middle and just getting to that point, and then once you get there, you're like,
Yep.
I'm done. I can't
Yeah.
do it anymore.
And it takes some retraining of the brain to master it.
Exactly.
And when we stop short like that, and we all do, because sometimes we need a breather, but in order to continue on to mastery, we have to learn that character part of perseverance. Like my little nephew, right? He could have easily stopped at whatever color belts. He could have stopped at a blue belt and said, that's good enough. And I'm tired. I need a break. Can I just stop doing this, Dad, for a year? No, he just kept going. He goes, nope, we got to keep moving on. And that's a hard frame of mind to get. But mastery is all about pushing through and continuing to improve and to get better and better and better until we actually do master something. So I guess my challenge to you guys would be really give it some thought in your life. And you can look at your whole life in this way and ask yourself, what have I mastered? And if you find yourself struggling to come up with some things of what maybe you've mastered, maybe ask yourself a second question and what could I have mastered if I would have stuck with it? If I wouldn't have jumped ship and moved on, or stopped part way, or if I would have committed to it, what could I have mastered? Does that make sense? Because that you might start opening up some avenues in your brain where you could start thinking better. You could start learning how to commit to things and just push through a little bit more to get to that next level. Because that next level is always the next step towards mastery. Then the next level. And so I think it's important that we have a bit of self-evaluation and some self-focus where we can actually learn about ourselves to know what are the obstacles that's gotten in the way in the past that we can move out of the way. What are all the extra things that's distracting us? What are those things that keep us from mastering whatever we want to master? So I think that's a good place to start. What do you guys think?
I'm already doing that. I'm working on my outcome.
Yep.
That's my whole process right now.
Anybody tried to get better without committing to something?
Yeah.
We do that all the time, don't we?
I failed for a long time doing it that way.
Yeah. What if we were just, whatever we're going to do, we're going to focus on, we're going to clear everything else out, focus on that, and commit to it, and don't stop until we reach it. You can pick things. I read a book by Henry Cloud, and he was talking about how people fail so much because they're trying to succeed in too many things. He said they're trying to lose weight while they're trying to get their finances under control. They're trying to, at the same time, they're trying to patch up some relationships with a relative, or they might be doing this or that. And basically what he says is, what if you just stop, focus on one thing, Set a time limit, maybe 3 weeks, maybe it's a 1 week, maybe it's a month, whatever it is, maybe it's 6 months, and focus on that and clear yourself. You can accomplish that one thing if you put all your focus into it, if your focus isn't divided. So you do that and you clear yourself of other things, and then you can move on to the next thing and master that, whatever it is, and then move on to the next thing instead of trying to get good at a bunch of things at once. Sometimes it's not our motive. It's not because we're lazy. It's because we're trying to do a whole bunch of things. We're trying to improve in a whole bunch of things at once, and we can't. You do this for a little while, and then you move over here, then this goes down, and then you do this, and you jump back to this. You're not getting anywhere. But if you stick with it, you keep going. You can become a master at one thing, move on to the next thing, and keep going. So I think that's important to understand.
You said a point that made me think of, because you were like, maybe it's not because you're lazy or you said some type of comment like that, but I feel like it made me think of like, individuals I know where it's like, they'll like say, oh yeah, I'm just being lazy. It's like, because they have so much on their plate, it's like maybe you're just taking some rest time or some downtime.
Yeah. I mean, maybe in some cases, maybe it is motivation. Maybe people are unmotivated, and that might be. But sometimes it could just be strategic. They're just trying to do too much at once, or don't know how to say no, or say yes too often, that kind of thing. So, all right, well, that's all I got.